Welcome back to the Dr. Supercoach podcast. You're on once again with Chizo. Dr. Supercoach, proudly sponsored by our partners at Code Sports. Not only can you find our articles at Code Sports, you can also find Pig's captaincy articles. You've just had a couple of weeks, mate. You got to step your foot into the waters of being a professional writer, mate. Hey, that's a big pat on the back, and you found a little bit nervous, or how'd you go with it?
Nah, no nerves for that.
He just crushed it. He just crushed it.
I really enjoyed it. Been putting the captain videos out on YouTube every week, and that's been going really well, having some good hit rates. But also, just the articles being able to, sell it to a different audience and kind of reach some people that, maybe don't go on YouTube but would prefer to read. Yeah, I've really enjoyed it. It's a good little stint. We'll see if we keep it going.
Now, JB outed himself as not watching the weekly articles, and that might be, some way correlated to his ranking this year, Pig. But one thing I do want you to let the listeners know, what's your 5-week rolling average for your pod play of the day, bit of fun, take us to Italy, POD captain option that you throw up for fun on every episode?
Well, it was Rowan Marshall's just given it a little bit of a dent. But prior to that...
He still went 118 or something though, right?
Yeah, 111. He still did really well.
Okay, yeah.
The pod vice-captains were averaging 155 over a 6-week stretch.
Wait. 155. But the Rowan Marshall, I'm pretty sure you gave a caveat that if... who's the big lumbering no-skills ruckman? Tom Campbell. If he was in the side, it didn't count. So are you counting Marshall in those stats and we can just keep it at a flat 155?
Yeah, look, I think if we're generous, we keep it at a 155. I'll still count it. I'll count Marshall. I'll stick to my guns. But I've got a really nice one coming up this weekend that I think will get my average back up there.
No spoilers. So how'd your week go?
It was interesting. I thought I was going well, but I think I've just had so many bye weeks, I was comparing my score to that. And then I came out of it. I finished Sunday and I went, 22.67. That's not horrible. That should be all right. And then dropped quite a few ranks, so maybe it wasn't all right. I think I'd just been looking at the buy scores and I got used to that scoring. So literally, if I look at my season-long trends, I pretty much haven't moved between 9K and 11K pretty much for 10 or 12 weeks.
Yeah.
I've just been stuck there, and that's kind of... We'll get into talking about, I guess, some learnings moving forward, but one of mine has just been cash. I haven't got a lot of the good cash generators, so I haven't been able to get the really good guys. So my team's not bad and it's finished, but there's a few guys that are probably a tier below what I would want, so that just means I'm not really moving.
Yeah.
But
I'll throw a stat to you as well. So I had a 24.06, which brought me back up to 21.84 in terms of overall rank. And more to your point that you've just kind of been hovering at the same rank for a couple of months. So in round 6, I was 3,700. I got as low as 1770. I've been in the top 2K 3 weeks of basically either side of the buys. I'm now at 2,100, so I've really not moved. But one thing I noticed that this week I was ranked 5,000th, almost exactly for the round. And that's the highest round rank I've had all season. And I'm definitely one of those nerds that has a spreadsheet at home of all my round ranks and stuff going back as far as Supercoach has tracked, which is 2014. It's been since 2015 was the last year I didn't have at least one round of the season ranked in the top 1,500.
Yeah, so
even last year I had a 440th and a couple about one at 1K and one at 1,900. It's just I'm not going anywhere because there's just so many teams that must be so similar that no matter what move I'm making, it's peanuts in comparison to those around me. I think that probably speaks to the difficulty in this game that's come from the education that podcasts like this have done over the period of time and just the genuine skill increases that have happened in the last 10 years.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a part of that. There's so much great content out there that people are a lot more informed. Also this year, I think 8 out of our 16 rounds have been a bye round, so they've been best 18, compressed scoring. So it's potential that, the difference between someone at 2K and 10K now I wouldn't be surprised if there's a lot less points between that margin now and everyone's really compressed because we haven't had those best 22s, like real big scores. So it'll be interesting on the run home if it's easier to climb ranks really quick or fall as opposed to other years, or if it's, yeah. So you said you're still a bit out of the top 1K. Is that a goal? Do you think that's achievable? Do you know how many points you are off 1K?
That's a great question you've given me without notice.
Yeah, I have. I guess, have you got a goal?
No, it's always top 1K. So coming into the season, my goal is top 1K. And one of the things that you did a solo podcast last night that's up on Patreon for free for anyone that wants to check it out. When Pistol went down as a late withdrawal, you mentioned that from this point to the end of the year, people were asking, should I be looking to do league moves or should I be doing rank moves? It all comes down to your goals. And more to your point, like I just want to finish top 1K every year. That's from round 1 to round 24, that's my goal. And so that's what I'll be doing going forward. So yeah, absolutely. That's what I'm looking at.
Yeah, great. And I think there are going to be some big swings, especially like we started with 40 trades, but there's, most people are down to 3 or 4. So there could be people running out. And if you're someone with 5 or 6, I wouldn't be surprised to see some teams put up some big scores coming home and kind of run those down that run out of trades.
Yeah. So it looks like I'm about 200 points out of the top 1K. So hopefully I can make that up. Like the week that I've got a finally finished team and it's not a buy round is my best round for the year. So maybe there's something to that. To your point there, Pig. I'm not entirely sure, but I've got my fingers and toes crossed.
200 points. 200 points sounds achievable to me. I don't know how realistic it is, but it sounds achievable.
Well, I think I was 126 points out of the top 1K 2 months ago. So, but like,
yeah, right.
It hasn't been a monstrous change in that period of time, but there's obviously been a bit of drama and stuff that's going on. So, I'm hoping that in the next month that the decisions I've made in terms of my upgrade cadence and that kind of stuff is going to shine through a little bit. Pig, we've also got the cup that's underway in the Dr. SuperCoach Slack. We've had just about 430 entrants this year, and we've gotten to the point now where we're just not making any concessions for people that don't follow the instructions correctly, and we've got to start chasing people up. Because invariably people will join the wrong groups or they don't tell us what their team name is, so we can't track it and stuff like that. And so of the 700 people in Slack that could have joined, we only had 430 that could be bothered to do it correctly. So it's the best chance I'm going to have of going back to back, Pig, is that people are just dropping out because they can't be bothered.
Oh, well, sometimes you need a bit of luck.
Shouts to Timmy Turtles. He kicks off his defence of being last year's winner against Channy. And Pistol, Pig, JB and myself all have our first matchup this week, Pig. We've had some accusations there's a bit of nepotism going on that all the podcasters somehow managed to buy in round 1 because of the uneven numbers. Can you speak to that at all, Pig?
Hey, no comments, but I'm glad. I probably needed it. And Baden, this week, look out, buddy. I'm coming for you.
Look out. Okay, we've also got some Patreon signups that have come in the last couple of days because of the cup. And I'm going to throw Pistol under the bus here. Because I've taken a few weeks off the podcast, and I'm usually the one that tells him to do the housekeeping on the back end of things. He hasn't done anything. So I've got all the way back to May of people here. I don't know if he's called you out. I'm going to assume that people since the last podcast need to be called out. So we've got Jamie Duggan, Tom Robson, and Patrick Stapleton. Thank you for signing up and joining for the Dr. Supercoach Cup. We really appreciate your support, and we hope you're having a good run. Now, I've also had some... it wasn't arbitration, but I've had a little bit of an argument that I had to settle in Slack, is that JB hasn't been on the Monday podcasts because of how many donations he's in arrears for names that he called out wrong last year. We're not going to make any comment. That has gone to a private arbitration. There is an NDA signed, and we don't have any comments about that, but I just wanted to tie a little ribbon around that so we stop people asking. I've had a few people do that. And the last bit of housekeeping, Pig, this is huge. Last week, Pistol said, and I quote, I really hope we get to the 30K mark by the end of the season.
For Cancer Council donations.
For Cancer Council donations. And I can tell you right now, Pig, we're at $30,309. So we're going to have to set a new goal. It's phenomenal, guys. We really appreciate all the help that we've had over the last 9 or 10 years or however long we're doing that. Every individual donation helps towards the Cancer Council. And I've got some huge donos to yell out right now. The Commissioner, for a couple of loophole mistakes, but more importantly, to rally us towards the 30K CC donos. Thanks, Commish. Big Matty has put up a huge donation, Pig.
Yes, Matty.
Massive. Matty's Maulers wants to thanks the boys for running the community and podcast. 4 times $150 for each of the 4 amazing podcast rap intros. I hope you'll have been enjoying that. I've had a lot of fun making those. And $20 times 2 for a couple of in-season donuts. Thanks for love. Thanks, Matty. That's a huge donation, dude. That is
$645, I believe he put in, which ticks us over the 30K. That's insane.
Phenomenal. End of financial year tax evasion. We're all about that. We absolutely love it, mate.
Thanks, Matty.
We appreciate your support. Philly McGilly, preemptive donation. Emergency on Revel, but left him on my midfield bench, and my midfield is complete. I'm anticipating my choice to loop him for Raul will lead to dumb things. Donation. Karma gods might be kind if I donate prematurely. Keep up the fight, guys. Great work. And that actually did.
Yeah,
Raul stunk it up. What was it, 79? 79, top of the head.
Revel outscored him.
Yeah, Revel in the 90s. Yeah, 79. Incredible. That's good karma coming back there for you, Philly McGilly. You've absolutely nailed it. Watto is Blotto. $11 for losing a highest score bet by 11 points to Chizo, and an extra $20 because my man Kerno was the culprit. Now, Watto, most people know that on this podcast, particularly JB on his Twitch stream, will do Cancer Council bets. So, like, I reckon such and such a player is going to go over-under. Now, Watto waited until 2 p.m. on Sunday when he was projected to beat me to be like, oh, Chizo, you want to do a donation to see who wins?
I saw that.
Look, bro, it's a Thursday or Friday or no dice. You can't come in on a Sunday. Thankfully, Kerno completely, you know what I mean?
Capitulated.
Yeah, that's the word I was looking for. I was looking for a PG version, and got me across the line by 11 points. So I appreciate Carlton beating up Richmond in just a different way. Rather than kicking it to our big gun forwards, we'll go to a different route to the goals, and I absolutely love that. So thanks for donation, Watto. And Stefan Laterra donating for my lowest scorer on the ground, being my captain for the second time this season.
What?
First was Zorko a few weeks ago, and now is Houston. Ironically, this time not taking a Zorko VC. Just sitting outside the top 2K in rank. Such a difference it could have made. Thank you for the donations, and thanks for everyone that has donated so far this season. Pig, I felt like what you summed up on your chat yesterday, that everyone should already be downloading so you can listen after this, is there's a lot of things that we want to reflect on, but it probably comes a little bit more later in the season when we've completely run out of trades. But there are definitely some key moments and key turning points in terms of the movements that I've made. And probably like for me, in terms of my upgrade cadence, the disappointments are probably things that stand out the most. And Pig, that for me is the amount of guys that I've picked up who are averaging 130 that have since become practically useless on an AFL field. I'm talking Sarong, I'm talking Tom Green, I'm talking Rao, I'm talking Steele, I'm talking English. Those 5 guys, just straight off the top of my head, as soon as I traded them in, somehow forgot how to football. That's got to be, like, reflecting on my season so far and why I haven't been able to break into the top 1K, it seems like every upgrade that I've done has not benefited by increasing the scoring potential of my team. Is that something you've noticed as well?
Yeah, it is, but it's probably not that surprising because when we look back at other years, there's very, very few players that average near 130 for the year. There's actually not that many that average 120 for the year. So if someone's going at 130, like up to their bye, I mean, statistically, it's probably likely that they might go 110 after their bye or worse, to kind of, just because not that many people go 120. So I can see why we've all done it. Like, you see these guys going at 130 and you think, I need them. Like, my season's ruined without them. But the data probably says that they actually probably will regress. And then there's always players that start the first half of the year poorly and then will put together a big second half of the year, like LDU last year. He looks like he's doing it again this year, apart from that blip last week. So, yes, I know why we get sucked into it, and I do too. One of my biggest turning points was trading out Grundy after only giving him 2 weeks and getting English at 700K.
Yeah, I did the same.
That has kind of derailed me, and then because of that, I wasn't able to get on like the Meeks of the world and whatnot to generate more cash that way. So yeah, I can see why it happened. It's not that hard to predict. No, sorry, it's not easy to predict. You don't know when these guys are going to drop or if they're going to keep going, and when everyone else has them and they're going nuts, you just want to get on them. But I guess the data kind of does suggest there's very few 120, 125 scorers every year. So why do we expect about 10 people to keep doing it?
You're saying that I was potentially out of my mind in the expectations that I had for my upgrades.
Not just you, everyone was. Like, we see Luke Ryan and Caleb Sarong and Tim English, like you said, going bonkers. Even Gawn, potentially could be back down at 600K after this week, potentially. But people were buying him at 700 because you can't live without him. So I see why we do it, and it's probably something we won't learn. But it is. It's probably good to look at historical trends and actually see how many players do average that.
Yeah.
And even I looked at it last year. Only 2 players for the entire 2023 didn't drop below 600K. That was Bont didn't, and Clary didn't, but Clary would have if he played one more game and didn't get injured. So you can look at that as last year, every single player apart from Bont has dropped below 600K. And this year, guess what? Every single player except for Bont has dropped below 600K at some stage.
Interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, so I see why we pay $650 for guys, because we're scared of life without them. But 2 years in a row, the stats said Bont is the only guy that doesn't drop below 600K. So trying to pick guys off at 550, I think, is the dream. And when you look at some of the top teams, that's what they've done. They got the Dawsons and the Neils and I guess you could even get Rao now for super cheap. Not that you'd want him, or the Yos or whoever it is. Picking guys off in the low 500s that are close enough or pretty good around the mark, really it's better than paying $650 for guns.
Yeah. And I suppose the next sort of reflection that I'm having, now that we've got 15 weeks of data on a couple of guys, we can sort of evaluate what our preseason thoughts were in terms of, how on the money we were. Yeah. And you're a ruck guru, I would say. You've had a lot of thoughts about ruckman over the course of the season.
I do think about them a lot.
And one thing that we said all along was that Gawn was going to be a clear R1. He's a clear R1.
Yep.
You can go back and listen to the preseason where I thought that Brodie Grundy had upside of 115, and that's why I wanted to start him. He's averaging 115.
Yep.
I didn't see Cherry going 110. I absolutely had him penciled as 100, 105 average and therefore wouldn't be relevant. He's actually relevant. And I didn't see Tim English becoming potentially no longer fantasy relevant as a starting option, as now averaging sub 110. You look at the rest of the ruckman, the Rowan Marshalls, Luke Jacksons, and that's it. There's no other names on that ruck line that we otherwise would be considering. The only thing that has
Toby
probably...
Nankervis, a bit of Toby Nankervis hate going on here.
No, definitely not. But I don't see Tony Nankervis as being specifically underpriced to start the year. He was 540K, 584K to start the season. You're only paying for that if you think you're going to be a top 2 ruck, which he's never going to be. So he's just doing nank things at 110 average for the year. Like that was him last year. It's probably him over the last 18 months, right?
128 5-round average, Tuesday.
Yeah. That'd be great if someone's looking to trade into him, but we're not, obviously. And so I guess more to my point is that a lot of the time, and then look at Fisher. Look at a lot of these guys. We are, in the grand scheme of things, over a large number of weeks, bigger data set, close to being on the money on the majority of things. So we're not necessarily getting it wrong. And, obviously that's why we're all ranked top 100K. We are all ranked top 100K.
Good.
But we're ranked at the pointy end is because we generally have a good feeling for the roundabout figures of what we're going to be looking for. But I then kind of preface that with the next selection is that even though we've made the mistakes of getting a Tim English for 700K, getting rid of a Grundy before he becomes the clear second best ruckman in the competition, the amount of trades that we have now, it's in my mind that we have enough data now to say that this is the way forward. Is that I don't really care all that much if I miss out on someone like a Meek or miss out on a particular rookie. With all the trades we've got, I've been able to finish my team, including all of the mistakes that I otherwise wouldn't have made because I've held trades. So I'm interested in your thoughts that because it's relatively easy to finish your team now just by chasing cash left, right, and centre. A Moyle pops up, you pick him up and make 150K off him. We don't need to be as perfect through the entire year. And if we trust a lot of our intuition, we're going to be around the mark the majority of the time. So I realise I'm only using the ruck line to make my point here, Pig, and it's obviously a bit of confirmation bias going on to make a point. But I'd love to know your thoughts about the totality of how those two things coalesce and what we need to be cognizant of in our strategies for next season and how we're going to be doing our upgrades and even our starting teams.
I like how you've slipped coalesce and cognizant into the same sentence. That's a PB. That's huge. But what I would answer is there's even more examples of that, like starting Nick Martin and Hayden Young, like you said, Zach Fisher, Alex Sexton. That one would have been a hard hold because he was dropped for a while. But especially the Martin and the Young, like we did so much research on the preseason and picked them for a reason, and then were so quick to yeet them out. So I do think that backing our preseason judgment for longer than a couple of weeks is really important, because if you held Nick Martin to say his buy, he's been an awesome pick. You could then flip him. And Pistol and I at one stage, one of the podcasts even talked about maybe loading up on kind of the mid prices that have the late buy and holding them the whole way. Like you think about, D'Ambrosio or Bonner, for example, like they get to a point maybe around at 7 or 8 or something and kind of plateau in price, but you could just hold them to their buy and not really trade them out there, and then they better cover. So there could be that kind of learning as well. Like if it's a mid prices on the last buy, really load up. But to your point, I think we do need to back our our preseason judgment picks a bit longer, because we do overreact. And like I was emotional about the Grundy one because I never wanted him to start him. I thought he tricked me with a round zero score, and then he did 2 bad ones, and I threw out my dummy. But we picked him for a reason. So probably backing it a bit longer is absolutely what we should be doing. In terms of cash, I'm not sure I fully agree, because I am an example where I missed so many elite cash generators. I think the guys that make 250K, like Sam Darcy, Ollie Dempsey, Kai Lohman, Burgoyne, like these, I missed all of those. I missed them all. Even I had chances to get them once they'd gone up 1 week. So I believe Sam Darcy went up 70K in his first week, and I just kind of was stubborn and refused to get him. He still made 200K after there and was good on field. So that's a learning for me, that like the absolute elite ones, just pay up a week after and get them, because I'm now in a position where I've had to finish my team with, so these guys are on field, Will Powell, Connor Rosie and Charlie Curnow, where I really wanted Jack Sinclair, Zach Merritt and Isaac Rankin, and I'm just like 3 or 400k short of doing that. And there are teams that got the good cash generators and have been able to do, I guess, my wish list. So I do think there is still a lot of value in getting in like the absolute elite cash generators and still making money. I put my team down to not being as good as I want it because I didn't generate enough cash. So, but I do agree with you with extra trades. You can swing rookies a bit quicker. So, yeah, you could get a Tom Berry and be happy with 100k and then go to the next one and be happy with 100k. It doesn't have to be like 150 plus that we always wanted.
Yeah.
But the absolute elite Sam Darcy, Ollie Dempsey types, I do think you still absolutely need them.
Yeah, and that's sort of to my point. If we're our starting teams, if we were in a season that had 30 trades, I don't think we're 2K. I think we're in the top 500. The amount of those guys that we wouldn't be able to flip-flop around, we would still have Grundy, we'd likely still have Sexton, and have all the benefit of those players that have come from our preseason research. You know, we wouldn't have had the ability to yeet Fisher out and then get him back when he becomes amazing.
Or me, McKercher in, McKercher out, McKercher back in.
Yeah. I think you said in Slack today you've used 8 trades on just those 2 players, which, you know, like you wouldn't have done that in previous years, you know what I mean?
And it is, maybe it's a bit of a learning that we try and go back to it, because even if I reflect on up until last year, I was purely like playing for leagues. I got into it playing against my friends. We had a good league. Always very competitive, but then last year one went to America, another got a job, our league kind of fell apart, so I started playing for rank.
Yeah.
But I played in the exact same way as I would for league in terms of holding these guys, having like 6 or 8 trades still at this time of the year, getting all the good cash generators and actually holding the good cash generators for longer. So talking about like Dacos and Ashcroft and Sheasel, and or this year like maybe McKercher's hard because he's injured, but Harley Reid, those guys, holding them for longer than we have, because right now we're kind of cashing them out right at their pointy end, like as their break even hits their average. But the real top picks like Harley Reid are the top picks for a reason, and they could just go on another little spurt and make you more money. So
yeah,
maybe going back to playing the league style, and you don't have to go the whole way, but just being a little bit more conservative maybe could work. I'm not certain yet.
Well, I'd like to play devil's advocate a bit as well. Like, yes, we can take learnings from what we would have done in a 30 trade system, but also the system this year where I have been going to the wall in terms of getting trades out, throwing trades at my team to make it better, which is what I've been saying all year.
Yeah.
As long as we make good choices, we still finish our teams. And maybe it's the 1 or 2 players that we really think if they do turn it around, this is one of the guys I absolutely must hold on to. Maybe they're the couple that we foresee in the future holding on to instead of just yeeting them straight away. If I go through all of my lines of my team and then it kind of explain my point, like, we can combine the best of both worlds, playing 30 trades and 40 trades into our strategies, but just making better choices. This will sort of make sense in a second. So my backline is Dacos, Sheasel, Houston, Luke Ryan, Lockie Whitfield, Jeremy McGovern. I'm pretty ecstatic with the back 6.
Yep.
For forward line of Flanders, Heaney, Zorko, Rankin, Fisher, Luke Jackson. Luke Jackson, people will, roll their eyes to, but he's also there for my sleep at night factor in terms of the ruckman.
Yep.
You know, like Kruger is not a bench cover for the next 8 weeks. You know what I mean? So that's where that comes from. Ruck line of Gawn and English. Yeah, there's realistically only one other guy in that position that I could want. And at the time that they traded, they swapped positions. I don't think anyone was predicting that they were going to swap in terms of their performance. So you can understand, like, in the same situation, you'd be a brave person to try and predict that someone's going to completely fall off a cliff and the other guy's suddenly going to start averaging 150 at home. Yeah. And then you look at my midfield, and this is where all the mistakes have happened. I could be going really well if I had just made better choices. So my midfield is Bontempelli, Noah Anderson, Caleb Sarong, Zach Butters, Jack Steele, Tom Green, Touk Miller, and Matty Rao. And while, like, on face value, they're all decent players, I got Steele when he was vastly outperforming what he's done for the remainder of the year. Caleb Sarong, when I picked him up, had a couple hundred, so he dropped like 60k, so he was still around the 600k mark, but has basically done nothing in terms of his performance. I had Bontempelli and Butters to start the year, and Tom Green, Touk Miller, and Matty Rao are my other three upgrades in the midfield. If you're not looking at the other, like, irrespective of the other lines, if I had just made better choices, like some of the guys that were vaguely the same price, Lockie Neal, Zach Merritt, Sam Walsh, Josh Dunkley, Adam Treloar, Errol Goulden, could have got an LDU. If I had just made a couple better choices, I'm sitting here going, I'm top 500. This year has been fantastic. There's nothing for me to learn because I've crushed it.
Yeah, the thing I take out of that is that all those guys you mentioned that you could have got have also had their blips and really average patches. So it's not about like who you.
But they're also significantly better than the alternates I picked. You know, I specifically have chosen a Touk over a Sam Walsh in that week. You know, instead of getting a Dunkley, I got someone completely different. Like, faced with those options, I've picked the wrong one.
Maybe a little bit, but I think it's more the price point that people are buying them at. Like if you're, like you said, buying Steele at like 630 when there was a Walsh there at 550, like that's a big blunder.
Yeah.
But, you know, you've owned some of those guys for really hot stretches too. I mean, I know you've said you trade them in, they go bad, but I think it's kind of like each player will go through like a 6-week hot stretch and then a 6-week cold stretch, and sometimes it's just timing and getting on them at the right time, which can be really hard to predict. So the thing I would like to fall back on is cash, like not paying $650 for Sarong because he's now $550, so he's had a cold stretch. But I would be happy to get on him now if I didn't own him, kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And until he copped the attention in the second half during the week, he was absolutely on track for a 120 plus.
Yep.
But my point being that using the strategy of absolutely throwing everything at it week upon week to try and get the best team as quickly as possible could have totally paid off in a different world if I'd made the right choices. And there are coaches out there that have done the exact same strategy. They've thrown the 30 trades strat out the window. They're now on the 40 trades. Just do what gets me the most money and I'll just flip players left, right, and centre, who have ended up with a Dunkley instead of a Jack Steele. I've had Jack Steele since round 6, and I've had 84, a 70, a 112, 122, which is his top score, an 86, 101, 118, 98, 83, 95. And at that time, he was 625k. So I basically could have picked any midfielder and I cooked it. You know what I mean? Yeah. There's other people that have ended up on the positive side of that ledger. I've just happened to stack 3 or 4 guys on the negative side. And so I think this has been a really, really good analysis, or not really an analysis, just a bit of a kind of like a anecdotal talk about we are now in the 40 trades era. There are still things that we should be more conscious of in terms of the 30 trades era. Like maybe a lot of us might have kept a Grundy instead of trading him to a 700k English. And that would have positively affected us. But also, if we lean back, if we go, we need to play for it like we're playing with 30 trades again. I think if we go back to our old ways going forward, it's not going to make us better in the 40 trade era.
No, I think we'll get left behind a little bit.
Exactly.
So, yeah, there's a mix. And I think there's teams at the pointy end that have done a bit of both. Like our mate Zero Pressure in Slack, the top-ranked Slack player, has been number 1 at points this season. He's currently 12th. I know he has all the preseason research, like the Nick Martins, the Hayden Youngs, the Brody Grundys. He's held them the whole time. And he's used his trades on other things like buying guys at 520k. But then there's other coaches out there who like have 1 trade left now and are in the top 20 because they've just gone ham and done that. So maybe both strategies can work. It's just interesting trying to find the balance and like literally picking one player over another can make hundreds of ranking points difference. And it may be a bit of luck as well.
Yeah. Well, if we contrast, if you refer to my team a moment ago, and I'm now going to call out ZP's team, and I think what you'll notice is going to be very, it's going to be obvious. So Sheasel, Houston, Luke Ryan, McGovern, Hayden Young, Nick Martin. That's his back line. You've got Dacos, Merritt, Sarong, Butters, Dawson, Steele, Rowell, and Bont. And he's also got a ninth midfielder in Tug Miller. So
an extra player.
Yeah, he's made some good choices along there. Grundy and Gawn, and then forward line of Flanders, Heaney, Zorko, Dylan Moore, Zach Fisher, and Luke Jackson. I wouldn't necessarily say his team is drastically different to mine to the point where I go, that's what I should have done. I think I think he's made some very, very intelligent choices to keep some of the guys that I jumped off of immediately, to your point, that it is saying, hey, maybe we do need to really analyse whether 2 or 3 weeks, say Nick Martin, for example, started the year quite poorly. Everyone's off him. Get him out of your team to get someone else. Maybe that's when we do take, we need more data points. We want to see. He's still getting 40 touches. Like at some point, it's going to turn around. He's going to average 120. And he did, Maybe that's where we take the 30 trades thing. But then at some point, to be able to get a Tug Miller as an M9, you're making cash somewhere. So he's obviously still making really intelligent cash-generating trades.
Yeah, I agree. A bit of a mix of both. And I know for his team, like I believe there was guys like Jordan Dawson and a few others in there, probably Zorko, that he picked up like in the low 500s, whereas some people are buying them in the 600s. And I think that's actually a really underrated difference that we need to take in.
He's also missed the likes of Tom Green, whereas the week I got him in for a 5. So there's a lot of really good coaches that unfortunately got hit with a 5. And in that week, it was still a really good trade to do. So that's what I say, don't be results based. Don't go, I made the right choice because I'm winning, or I made a bad choice because I'm losing. In that same moment, Tom Green's been averaging 130 to start the year. He's come off a couple like flat tons and you've picking him up for cheaper. That's still a great trade to make.
You made the right decision with the data available to you. It just injuries are a part of the game, or suspensions or whatever it is. Can't predict everything. Yeah,
absolutely. Pig, the next thing I do want to talk about is sort of like your first impressions with our full premium teams. I wouldn't necessarily say I've made too many concessions with my team. I'm reasonably happy with the premiums I have. Obviously, the midfield is the one that I kind of put my hand up and say I could have done a better choice there. But I feel like the premium teams that I've had in previous years were scoring 2700s to finish the year. And I feel like 2400 is not all that much more than I was scoring in the buy rounds with 18 players. I don't know if there's... My expectations of a quote-unquote full premium side is different from previous years. What are your thoughts on the first week, which was round 16 with a fully premium side?
I think this isn't really a great week to judge the full premium because there are only 2 players that scored 150, whereas normally we have quite a few in that basket. 157 was the highest score of the round. And there were so many premiums that went under 100 for various reasons, whether it was tagged or just a bad game or
English, you're just no good.
Yeah, or English no good. So, I don't think this is a great week to judge it. I think this week I've just been doing my captaincy research and there's a lot more premiums that I'm more comfortable have quite good matchups. So I wouldn't be surprised to see some really, really big scores this week. Having said that, there were 2 coaches who cracked 2,700 this week.
Yeah.
But I think this was just a really weird week, especially for our midfielders, and especially the tag being back in fashion is really hurting a lot of coaches, a lot of players. So if that continues, maybe we won't get as big as scores, but if that's kind of just a fad that might fade out after a month.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
who knows?
The fact that it's becoming progressively more prominent as the year is going on, it's making me more worried.
Yeah, it could be. It'll also just be interesting, say once we get another 4 weeks in and, there's only a month left of the season, whether the teams that aren't really competing for anything or are outside the eight are kind of, drop the tag and don't really worry about it and just kind of try and blood some new guys and then they can get beaten up on. Will be interesting to see. There's usually some weird things that kind of happen in that last month.
Yeah. And interestingly, in terms of the tag, Hardwick came out on his post-game presser and literally said, the quote was something like, "Earth to all coaches out there, you should be tagging Dacos and DeGoey every week." I was just like, don't put that out in the universe, Dimmer. Come on, mate. What are you doing? Telling other coaches to tag him, which I thought that was funny.
One of the ways around it is I've seen your team and you've got all 4 Gold Coast midfielders.
That's right.
Just buy them all so that when one gets tagged, the other 3 still go well.
They get off the chain. See, collectively they score 500 points, so whichever one gets tagged, it doesn't matter.
You talk about, we talk about in draft handcuffing, especially for ruck. So you might, draft both Meek and Reeves so that one's on your bench. When one's playing, they're in the team. And then if he gets injured, you put the other one on.
Yeah.
You've just handcuffed 4 dudes together right now.
It's like a human centipede. No, anyway, the next question that this leads in perfectly. In terms of your upgrade, did you make any deliberate decisions? And referencing my son's move here, you're the guy that likes to talk about the scores to inside midfielders and general defenders, all that kind of guys. You've got all that stuff locked down. I just look on SuperCoach and go, hey, that looks like a decent run. I better get some Suns guys. So their final games through the year, so they just played Collingwood, where they're pretty good performance. Then they've got North, Port, GWS, Brisbane, and then the finals, West Coast, Essendon, Melbourne, Richmond. I saw that and was just like, it could be a little tasty in terms of trying to win some grand finals.
Yep. No, I think it will be.
Have you made any sort of assessments like that when you were finishing your team, or you were just like, got 500k, this player 500k, get him?
Yeah, I have tried to look at it, but a lot of the times I couldn't afford the guy that had the good run, or it didn't quite work out really.
Yeah.
The 2 that I did get because they had really good runs coming were McGovern and Yo. Just West Coast having a really good run for the designated kickers and the inside midfielders coming home. So they were both based on, they were quite cheap for what they could do at the time I bought them. So it was a pricing as well, but also those 2 were based on their run coming home. Then I'm just looking, I'm finishing my Curnow. Curno's a really big one, actually. They've got the best run coming home for key forwards after having quite a really tough run until their bye. So Curnow was purely based on their run coming home. Mm-hmm. Although I probably would have expected a bigger one versus Richmond, but that's key forwards for you. Then my final trades, Connor Rozee and Will Powell, they were just kind of guys at that price point that I could afford. They weren't necessarily fixture related, I traded in Chad Warner when I had a chance to trade in Lachie Neale, and that was kind of a sliding doors moment that's already cost three
exactly
or 400
what I'm
points.
talking about. You pick one guy over the other in the midfield and you end up getting burnt. No one was going to turn around and say Chad Warner was going to spud it for the next month.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think it is really, in your first half of the year when your upgrade cadence is starting, I think it's kind of too long. There's still 16 games left. It's probably too long out to think about the fixture. But once you get into the buys and you're making your final few trades, I think it is quite handy to look at. And I know that there were people, and I recommended people trading in LDU because he had this the single best run for inside midfielders coming home. Last week I was really hot on telling people to trade in Jack Sinclair because he had the best run coming home for attacking defenders. So I have been trying to help people identify them. It just hasn't worked for my team because I don't have the cash to get those guys. But I do think it's quite a good way to go about it when we're down to only 8 to 10 weeks left.
Yeah. Well, coming down to 8 to 10 weeks, most people have either finished their team or making their last upgrade. But there's also kind of murmurs that Zach Fisher's got a mid-foot strain, which an interesting injury to have, Pig, because that could mean dozens of different things. It doesn't really tell us anything, unfortunately. Are there any players that if we are forced to kind of make a move that are sort of jumping out at you? Like probably one that everyone's starting to pick up on recently is Jai Caldwell for the Bombers. Like he's basically the exact same price as Fisher. Surely you've got enough cash in the bank to be able to do a straight trade if we find out that Zach Fisher's got a foot injury like McKercher does or did.
Most people would. I actually just checked and I'm $200 short because I've got nothing in the kitty. But yeah, I think he's a great option. You and I are Bombers fans. I feel like Bombers fans know that Caldwell, and have known for years that Caldwell is an absolute gun. We've just got so many mids running through there that he hasn't really got the mid time needed to show it. I do still have concerns when Parrish comes back that he might get pushed out more. I was worried when Setterfield come back, but I do believe Setterfield's actually healthy and just not getting a game currently.
Same with Shields, same with Sada, same with Hobbs. We have the fact that Caldwell is getting mid-time, and the only one that you can say for certain will come into the team is Parrish, and the guys that are fit are not playing. You just have to assume that that's Caldwell's role now.
Yep, I think he's a great trade-in. I know the AFL fantasy community have been on him for like 4 to 6 weeks. They picked it up really quick, I noticed, on some of their creators. So that's one that we've potentially missed, but I think it's still a really, really good option. Like he's only 500k. He's going on 10. I think he's just a gun in general. So great option. Also, I mean, I think Isaac Rankin's the best option if you can afford him. It's about a 70k leap to get there. But I think Rankin's incredible. I think the experiment of him like playing forward and mids, I think he's going to lean more towards mid coming home. Like whether Adelaide actually make finals, probably not. I don't know, but I think they want to be giving him so much mid time. So I think he's probably the best option. Assuming people have Flanders, Heaney and Zorka, I'm going to make that assumption because I think most people do. Yeah, I really like Rankin, really like Caldwell. Dylan Moore's, within 25k, he's really up and down.
Yeah.
You know what you're going to get. You're going to get a 130 and then you're going to get a 60. But I guess that's the same with I'd put him in the boat with Curnow. They could both do that same thing. So there's a couple options. We liked Simpkin last week, but he didn't really do that much this week to really excite us. Anyone else you've got on your radar?
No, that's pretty much it. Caldwell's the name that I was coming up with just because it's so much of a straight swap. Like the majority of coaches, or I'm assuming the majority of coaches have like more than $2,000 left in the bank. Like if you've absolutely nailed your trades and end up with less than that, like Pig, tough luck. You're looking at a Harry Mackay or a Charlie Curnow, unfortunately. But I think the majority of people would be able to do Caldwell quite comfortably. All the other guys that you've nominated are more expensive, by 25k for Dylan Moore, for argument's sake, 70k for Isaac Rankin, 75k for Isaac Rankin. So he's probably the obvious straight swap for me.
Do you have a line for Fisher in terms of how many he would have missed for you to trade or hold? Like if he was missing 2 weeks, would you try and hold and cover with Kruger or Dowling or whoever else people have there, or is 2 weeks out of 8 left too many to hold?
I'm still all or nothing. So the caveat I'm giving to this is that I've got a couple trades left, and I would probably, like, if he comes out with a news that he's got a McKercher type injury, as it turns out, for example, he's straight out, and I'm picking up Caldwell and just fighting my way to the end of the year. But that's because of my preface that I'm top 1K or it's a failed season for me. You know, so people are going to have different goals. If you're playing for leagues and stuff like that, obviously it's going to be reflected by your ladder. Like if you're 13th, there's no point holding him and missing finals. Or if you've already got the double chance locked in, absolutely you can hold on to him. So people's goals for the remainder of the season are going to dictate what they should or should not be doing. So me planning to trade Fisher if he's out for 2 weeks shouldn't dictate what you're going to do with your own team.
Also, Kruger does play the first game of the round before Fisher, so you could always put the ear on Kruger. And if he gets a 70 or an 80 somehow, you could potentially hold it for a week and then see what happens.
And then you could hold, if you've got Dowling, a lot of people might have Dowling with some, even if you've got some DPP swing, just send like a Kynan Brown or something into the midfield. At least you've got 2 cracks to try and cover him.
Yeah, you do. I'm just having a look. I've got a Luke Jackson, Harry Mackay, Brian Myers are probably my 3 best options. All not in great form.
And, oh God, we really need another Sean Darcy rest, don't we? I'm not going to say the word. Rest is what I'm going for.
Yeah, you can't say that about your guy. He stormed you home one season.
Exactly. And totally skill-based. That was a skill thing. Nothing to do with the fact I was $2 short of Grundy. They're not flukes. They're happy accidents.
Well, I'm $2 short of Jai Caldwell, so I'm going to have a happy accident.
Yeah, whoever your pick's going to go crazy.
All right.
Make sure you tell everyone.
Moving on from happy accidents.
My Lord. Pig, that pretty much wraps it up. Like, for any specific Q&A questions that you do want to check out, Pig's done a fantastic episode that's up for free on Patreon right now that you can check out. He's done some great Q&As from Slack with specific questions, even diving into, was it chocolate flavours as well? I think you're a Cherry Ripe fan. I heard that on the episode, Pig, so that's a spoiler. But looking ahead, Pig, we've got your captaincy video coming out tomorrow. Wednesday? Yeah, Wednesday. Yep. Coming out tomorrow. I've got to get my days crossed because I'm thinking it's the Monday podcast. Check out the Pig Patreon pod. You can find us all on socials, pig_DRSC, Cheezo_DRSC if you want to get either of us. And feel free to leave some feedback on Spotify. You can leave us a rating over on there now to say if you like the show or not. We do check those occasionally, and if you've got a really good and funny one, we'll shout it out on the episode next week. So, Pig, thank you for sitting down with me and having some great discussions. This was thought-provoking, if anything, mate. So I appreciate the time and your hard work. And everyone, thanks for listening. Have a great week. We'll see you in the next episode of the Dr. Supercoach podcast.